Okay, so I'll start with an introduction for myself. It looks a bit scuba with the picture, doesn't it? I'm the FEP Global Head of IT Asset Management at Danske Bank. We are actually based in the UK, as in myself, Scott, and one other colleague. We're hosted through the London office, but Danske Bank is obviously in Copenhagen in Denmark. And then we have some IT centres in Vilnius in Lithuania and also Bangalore. A little bit about me, I love my old school dance music. I think I'm still raving and misbehaving from the 80s. So I've missed this in lockdown. Hopefully I'll get to go to a few more this next year or so. That was actually in Manchester at Albert Hall, so that was good fun. I love Disney, Universal. Rather than Disney princesses, I'm afraid I'm a bit more of a Star Wars and a Harry Potter girl. But comes with the territory when you work in IT, doesn't it? That is a picture of one of my dogs, Austin, who likes to join in on all of the Zoom and team calls that are going on at the moment, which is extremely embarrassing. I'm part of the ITAM Forum. The ITAM Forum is a non-for-profit industry board which is around trying to get ITAM into the wider IT community and learning a little bit more about it and the benefits of it and how we can promote ITAM as a profession as well.
Yeah, so a bit about myself, Scott Beasley, CITAM I guess. We've been working with Rachel now for over 12 years, or not sure for 12 years or more. Recently moved to Danske Bank, well, three years now. Wow, where's that gone? But I've got a family myself outside of work, very, very busy with 3 children, all range of ages from 11 to 2.5, so hands are really full. Like Chris the other day, I'm not so much on board games, but I love sports. I'm a Liverpool fan, just told Phil here, he's an Everton fan, don't hold your head. And I love running and I love travel. Travelling's back on now, so great. Very clearly, I do running because I get away from the kids quite a lot. So that's why I'm quite fast and try and get away. But that's for me really in terms of that. In terms of my background, the industry's split into like 4 different sectors with ITAM, and I've kind of covered all 4. So it's kind of business, the end user community. There's kind of compliance led and very much niche boutique SAM providers. And then we've got resellers like computer center and service providers and so forth. So from the range of industry, we've got really good experience. That's why we're talking to you today, to try and reinvent the wheel a little bit and start to branch out into why ITAM is so important when linking with security and procurement and other areas of the organisation.
Okay. So, as I mentioned before, I'm part of the ITAM Forum. Please do look it up if you're interested in ITAM. There's some extra resources in there we're trying to make available to people, and it is a non-for-profit, industry-led organisation that will give you information around ITAM. Like I said, the objectives is about enabling the ITAM professions, and obviously there is an ITAM standard, the ISO 9770. However, there is no accreditation for it, so we're also looking to bring that to market as well around getting that accreditation for organisations. So a little bit about Danske Bank.
Yeah, so people don't know that. Rachel already mentioned from an IT perspective, we've got main centres in Denmark, Lithuania and India, but from an actual banking, investment banking and actual end user customer basis, we're very much in the Nordics. We've got a little splattering in the UK from an investment perspective, and we've also got a splattering in Ireland as well through Northern Bank and so forth. However, from an IT perspective, you say we've got a considerable amount of employees, but we're talking about 15,000 servers or more, virtual and so forth, lots of desktops, and as we'll come into it, a lot of software applications. And these are things from we sit in technology and service ambitions. So we align to TNS, and these are our kind of key main principles. And I guess what we mentioned earlier today was around being customer centric, and this is something me and Rachel really tried to do over the last 12 months. Really see how we influence or can help the bank provide that key services to our end customers. Not something ITAM has really been aligned to very much over the years, but we're now in a position where we can really influence and understand the outward facing applications and how we can really help the agility, the creativity, and insurance from a compliance and regulatory perspective to give that foundation for us to do what we would do best, and that's serve our customers. Another key area which we'll go into is risk and compliance. This is our kind of bread and butter, isn't it, in terms of what we do. And when I talk about Shadow IT, we'll show some guidance in terms of how we've really focused on that element to really showcase this to board level like we talked before. And there's loads of synergy around what Arma said and what Box said earlier in terms of the SaaS application suite, and the application suite is just going through the roof at the minute. Mainly because of the pandemic, people want self-serve, people want to ensure that, you know, really agile, really creative, and this is what we want to enhance and embrace, but provide that control and governance and regulatory requirement from a financial perspective. And obviously being efficient, and from a Danish perspective, culture and sustainability is really key and high on the agenda going forward.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what a roadmap or the areas that ITAM get involved in and what were key priorities for us. I've got 2021 and 2022 that they're similar but with some slight different nuances. So I hope you can see this okay. So software asset management used to be very much around license compliance, you know, looking at your inventory, looking at your licenses, seeing what the delta is and how you can remove that delta, remove risk. But one thing that we are now, because we're quite mature in the organisation, so it's very much around reduced spend and optimisation. So we have work streams within the department. These are the types of work streams that we have. We use Jira. Everybody can align themselves to whichever work stream that they want to do according to their experience or according to what they would like to develop in. So we look at cost savings, you know, how can we get cost savings from software around optimisation, cost savings against contracts. We then align ourselves with software renewals, all the different software renewals through procurement and working with the business application owners as to how can we reduce the spend in your particular software contracts and improve that process. We also have like what we call major vendor governance. So some of the biggies like the IBMs, the Oracles and Microsoft, you know, SAS as a vendor, Citrix, VMware. We have dedicated people who are consistently working with the business around optimising their estate. There may be reporting requirements that are required for particular vendors like IBM. You have to, you know, produce your reports on a regular basis. There may be, we're looking to do a contract renewal or that we are due to do a true up, so we work very closely against those. We collaborate a lot with finance and procurement, and then we also look at how we can produce different reporting dashboards that give visibility of software assets to our application owners and, you know, vendor managers and contract managers and procurement and whoever needs to see them really. So technology and data, we currently use Flexera for our software asset management, so it's like continuously keeping that up to date. We need to keep up to date on all the documentation as well. Obviously that's part of the general you know, ITAM controls that you have to do. It's about having documentation up to date as well, which is good for internal audit. We are looking at how we can integrate other tool sets into our tooling, and then also how we can give data out. One of the areas that is key to us, and there was a slight mention of this before, was around the common service data model. How do you map your business applications and services down to your hardware assets and your software assets, and how do you see what's used within them? And that's one of the sort of big buzzwords at the moment, is the common service data model that people are working towards. We do use ServiceNow for the asset management database, and we use that for application portfolio management and CMDB and everything. So we're moving towards that area around bringing software out of Flexera and into the sort of wider scope. So the ITAM technology and tooling, we're always looking at what is the best in the market, what is now required from ITAM, does our tooling fit with that? So we are you know, looking into different toolings and doing different assessments and things like that, just to see if they fit within our business needs. So hardware asset management, we have to do the governance on that, which is, we took that on the other year. We aren't the IT asset type owners. I think it's very important for ITAM that ITAM is not seen as the owner of assets. We own the governance, but we don't own the assets, because IT assets are across the entire organisation, and you would therefore be responsible for the entire organisation. We don't deploy software, we don't own the budgets for software, so we're there to offer best practice advice, optimisation, governance, controls, that type of thing. So we work very closely with internal audit. There are a huge amount of external regulations that we have to adhere to in the banking area, and also for security. And you will find there's a huge amount there around IT asset management, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So we look at ensuring we've got the HAM objectives in place, the strategy, and like I said, working to external regulations. Compliance and risk is our the absolute basics of ITAM, what we have to do. So we look at emerging technologies and how we can expand our scope. We look at the software onboarding process, how we can, once it's been onboarded, we can get all the license entitlements and contracts and make sure that it's compliant. The risk governance around new services being onboarded, we need to make sure again that we're there at the beginning of that process. We are responsible for process ownership and controls around IT asset management, and we need to be able to report to those to IT business risk and controls, and we're there also to track ownership around applications and around assets as well, and make sure that there is an owner for all of those, and integrating with key processes like security and procurement. So shadow IT, we're going to talk about later. We're going to cover a little bit about that. I'm sure
more detail.
Yeah, in a bit more detail. And then the other thing is around keeping everybody educated in our department, and also our stakeholders, how they're educated. We use things like Yammer pages. We go out and have presentations to our application owners. So far as the programme management is concerned, so that's looking at the entire programme and making sure that we manage on that and report on it, and that we can see progression. And then we always keep up to date our maturity assessments. So this was last year, our maturity assessment, we are 99% on the ISO standard, which is pretty much unheard of. We started off at 78%, which was best in class, and then we took that to a new level really, which is all doable, as long as you focus on it. Slightly different. I won't go into all the details here, but let's just have a look slightly. Sorry, I'm standing in front of you, Scott.
Don't worry. Stage is not
big. So
big.
I can see. The difference is, you can see here, it's asset efficiency and cost transparency. So that's really tying into what the company's objectives are. So it's always thinking about what are the company objectives and how can ITAM feed into that. So one of those things is efficiency, and another one is about transparency. So the transparency of information and your IT area, and giving that back to the business, the service owners and the application owners need to have the visibility. So it's very much thinking about that. Very similar as previously, some of our staples, as I mentioned, within data and tooling, how do we map all that, those assets into the common service data model and take that to the next level. CMDB collaboration, we work hand in hand with config management, so how do we ensure that our data is similar in the CMDB, and are there any gaps? So working with those. Now in hardware, looking at the financial planning around depreciation, asset tagging and sustainability and recycling. And another area is hardware lifecycle management, which is slightly different to hardware asset management. I will talk about that a little more in ISF controls. Governance, compliance and risk, we're looking to move all our documentation and processes into the wider, it's called Do It, and it's how your processes touch point with other departments' processes and how you work together. Sometimes we can work in silos, can't we, with our processes, and they don't link together. So Do It is a good way of how both processes integrate together. We've really got into this ITAM controls, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit afterwards, but that's something where we have to report on a regular basis. So again, mainframe, bringing that into our fold, Mac software, mobile software. Shadow IT we're going to talk a little bit about, which Scott will cover, and again, moving forward with the business engagement, and then we're going to be doing another hardware asset management maturity assessment. I don't know if anybody gets involved in maturity assessments, but I think they're pretty good. I think you should always be doing them, you know, to check where you are and to check how you need to improve. I run my programme of work through looking at what the business objectives are. That's the one thing we look at. Then we look at, as a team, what do you guys think we need to improve on? And then what I'll do is I'll go to industry best practice and see where we are compared to where we need to be. And we take all of that into our programme, and that's sort of how I run my programmes. So, has anybody worked within, or do you know about ISF? No? Okay, so it's the Security Framework Book of Controls. And within that, there will be all the controls that a company should be running across security. And for hardware asset management and for software asset management, there are multiple different controls. So risk assessments, vulnerabilities, hardware lifecycle management, system development and business continuity. And this are particularly around the end of life for hardware and for software. So we have to run these controls to ensure that we have processes in place for all of these things. External regulators will want to know that you're not running end of life or end of support hardware or software, because it can be vulnerable, especially if you've got customer data. So we've not got much time, so I'm going to have to really speed things up. Security risk controls for ITAM. Again, hardware lifecycle management, system development talks about, you know, you must have software licensing, you must have an asset register. And the way that this works is they'll come in, they'll have all these list of security controls that they will put in something like ServiceNow. They'll assign them to the correct departments who need to deal with them. And then we have to say, yes, that's what we do. And then we have to report back to them to say, yes, we are doing this and this is the proof. Yes, we have an asset register. Yes, it has everything within it. Yes, we have everything documented. Yes, we are buying licenses if we are looking into gaps, and we have to provide the evidences back. So if you haven't worked within these type of control frameworks, you might hear them as book of controls. I can guarantee that it definitely will be coming.
It's just not a snapshot, is it though? It's sustainability, isn't it? It's ensuring that once you've got that baseline, you move forward and ensure that it's controlled on a regular basis, and that's what the regulatory requirements are, aren't they? It's not just a line in the sand, and yes, we do it once. It's how do we put that process and get the right people in place to ensure that the continuation, as it evolves, that we capture that.
So that's for security, but obviously we have them, multiple different banking regulations will say, are you in control of your IT assets? Can you please provide us the proof of this, you know, asset register, or do you have processes in place, and how many applications have you got end of life? What is your process for managing end of life applications? So they're getting a lot smarter, and this is something that we have to keep up to date with.
Yeah,
and it also is your license to operate, and if you need a business case for IT asset management, then this is what it would be. It would be security. Some people say cost and compliance, software license compliance are nice to have, as were IT security controls or your license to operate.
And that's how we've got a seat at the table, at the top table these days, in terms of sometimes it's difficult for ITAM to get that traction or get that visibility. So yes, also one of the areas what I talked about today, it links very much to security, give that a bit more insight, is Shadow IT. Now, Shadow IT is a buzzword, it's out there in the marketplace, and it's going to be, if it's not on your radar at the minute, it will be very soon, because it's such a vast subject to cover. And I'm going to come at it very much from a SaaS and software application perspective. With the rise of the pandemic and people consuming software in multiple different ways, we found a way to help track and manage this and be proactive in this space. But what it brought out was that it was the synergy and the requirement to link with, you know, security and risk to really get this on the radar and take this to the TNS risk committee, which is like the senior CTO, CIO kind of level people to get that visibility. And one thing we really struggle with is the definition. So this is a Danske Bank definition. You may slice and dice it in any different ways as you see fit, but that kind of covers all in terms of making sure that, you know, it's anything out there that hasn't gone through IT or has been kind of avoided the right governance and control process. And we don't want to be the policeman or wield the stick. We don't want to be those people, but all we want to say is, you know, assess the applications and software to say, what is the business value it brings, and does it cause us vulnerability or security risk in terms of those things, right? So we don't want, as long as we've assessed it properly and we take the risk on the chin, so to speak, then and manage that risk, then it's okay to utilise a consumer. However, what we try to uncover is the unknown unknowns. What don't we know? You know, data's the new oil. What data is being served out of the environment, out of the bank, that exposes us? But very much, you know, for all the right reasons of being legitimate, obviously, in reason, but it's really driving that kind of thing. So if you go to the next slide, cheers. This is how the project structure, in terms, it just shows the diversity and how it links into the CTO and CSO, such things. They govern it, that we report into those guys. BSS&G is the overlay that we align to, and it connects all the dots. So you can see the key stakeholders, and we're like the glue to all this to make this happen. It doesn't sit snugly in any one place. So, you know, we're dealing with procurement, like Rachel says, but cyber ops, cyber design have a massive impact in terms of assessing these applications for us as well, as does risk, making sure that we align to all the risk and ITBRC controls and modules and expectations there. But it also connects us to the business and the outward facing, so like large corporates, P&BC, that's where we really look at to, like right at the start, is the customer facing side of things, and, you know, really clear target outcomes in terms of, you know, what we're looking to address in terms of security, you know, avoid data leakage, minimize vulnerabilities, be proactive, have that resilience. How many times have the help desk or service desk received a call about an application they didn't even know about recently, just because of that, you know, the way it is. Yeah, and this is a starting point in terms of trying to assess that. And we use a tool called MS Defender. It really helps us to slice and dice. When you first collect the data, it's such a huge data set, but it provides really cool risk definitions to allow us to really apply our prioritization layer to that, and looking at the real high risk, high security conscious applications. So looking at, you know, SOX, SLC2, GAP side of things, and huge buzzword as well, GDPR. What data are we, you know, legitimately trying to consume and or share in this space? And it helps us categorize it as well. We can pick our battles quite easily from a productivity perspective, and also so overlaying that gives us a real chance to pinpoint the areas of focus. Otherwise, it's such a vast, kind of boil the ocean, so to speak. Next slide, and go to the next slide's probably best. And this is what kind of drills out. So work stream 2 is the security work stream. So really defining that on risk-based, so applications with a risk score of 0 to 3. That's what, based on those different attributes and functionality, that's where it helps us to assist, and it helps us to pinpoint those high risk, highly vulnerable, to allow us to get that data control and data vulnerability reduced.
I think we've tried to rush through the last so.
I could talk about this all day.
Yeah,
so if you got any questions afterwards, come feel free and we can talk about it in more detail. But,
do you have any questions now? Go on.
There must be a lot of overlap between what you do and what procurement do, especially when it's licence renewal time. How do you where are the boundaries?
Well, we collaborate with them, basically. We work with procurement. Procurement provide to us a list of all the different renewals that they've got. We create, a work stream within our department and allocate that, and then it's up to them, our ITAM managers, to then work with the procurement manager and to work with the application owner. Procurement, really, it's about that final negotiation element of it, where ITAM, it's about speaking with the business application owner, looking at the inventory, look at what's being used, can we optimise it in any way, and once we've done all of that, then we can hand it back to procurement and say, right, we're ready now, this is the position.
I think we try and empower them to have that
So you're giving them the raw material.
Be on the
Yeah.
front foot to say, we want to renew this amount for this reason, or we're gonna that's end of life. We're not looking to replace that by something else. Giving that key.
That's on the sort of, I would say, like what we call the tier 2 and tier 3. Obviously, when we're talking on the big tier 1s, it is very much a very virtual collaboration, as where we will bring our expertise in the market around, negotiation strategies, as well as working with procurement on their negotiation. We sort of complement each other, I think, really.
It's fair to say we put a lot of emphasis on that though. We saw the importance. So me and Rachel worked at AstraZeneca together years ago, and we sat in procurement, so we got a lot of those traits. So when we went to Danske Bank, well, Rachel went first and I came with, we focused on that relationship and collaboration with procurement. It's really key to get that synergy and get that built-in process, that automation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you both. Any further questions before we close out? There's one here.
So really think it's great what you were doing in your maturity score. I think that's unbelievable. Do you have like a similar level of understanding of your data? So you talked about knowing all of the assets and how they connect in. Do you know where in Danske Bank, where all the data travels to, and what companies or what SaaS platforms are processing what data?
Well, that would be obviously a slightly different department to us, but so far as our data is concerned, we do look at sort of like data warehousing, bringing all the data in from different points and then collaborating to see where it is. But so far as, do you mean like customer data?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the data that the business processes and being able to
Yeah.
understand which suppliers are managing or processing what bits of data and creating what value from what data. I think
Yeah.
is the
The next
step in the chain.
it is
Yeah.
and we've got connect. So we've just gone to be tribe based, and we've got like epics and so forth, and themes. One's being, and we're the glue to a lot of this. So it's GDPR is one, data management is another, right? So what's upstream and downstream? How does that? What data is transferred, and where does it sit, and all that type of thing. And that's because we're at this point in time in terms of our evolution. It's kind of, we're there and we're at the seat at the table, so we can start influencing that and get more and more aligned to that as well. That's the next phase. As is APIs and asset, and things, and it's a whole
It is,
and
yeah.
and bots as well. We're talking about bots as well. That's another thing. Is it a
But
user?
business processes are seen as assets as well, so that we have something called the interconnectedness policy, which is about how all of that maps, taking it down from the business applications, the business processes, and then, like you say, the full data flow of everything. I mean, it's a massive job for organisations, isn't it? And we're doing the common service data model. I think we're doing the version 2. I know that version 3 is out now, I think. So it's trying to get all of that. We're mapping all the business applications and services and technical services, and then we're doing the underneath stuff. So the data and the process bit is the other element, isn't it? So we're trying to give them the basis for that, but I can't really go into that element.
Every time we get a line in the sand, we get another curveball, another asset to track, or something like, or data, or like I say API, or bots, or whatever. It's reinventing.
Oh, that's been interesting.
Gosh,
So I don't know if we've got time to discuss this actually.
Yeah,
but
do it offline. It's part of the
we've just
shadow
created
IT.
the process basically as to we might be in the best place to track it. So there's a process that we've created for end user computing and EUDs, how they get registered in the system, and then obviously working with security. But I think Scott would be great to do that because he's helped develop that process.
Yeah.
We have a 10-minute slot after this session before the next session, so if it's possible for you to pick up on that would be great. Yeah. So thank you both very much indeed. Could you join me just thanking them in the normal way? Thank you.